cr101radio.com, podcasts, and more.
Okay, so last time we walked through Genesis 1 to 3, and we found something the exiled theologians don't want you to find. We found that your identity was assigned to you before the world had a single sinner in it. You are a dominion man, made from the mud, mandated to manage the earth and everything on it. And we found that exile, the real biblical thing, is not an identity at all for Christians. It's a judgment. Adam and Eve were exiled from the garden, not from the earth. And they were exiled because of sin. That's God's definition, written by His own hand, and nobody has the right to scribble over it. We also saw that God set the wealth of the world, gold and precious stones, right beside His people to fund the mission of dominion. And we saw who God appointed to rule the whole earth under Him. It wasn't the wicked, it was the righteous. That was episode 1. Hold on to it, because today we're going to build on that foundation. I'm Nathan F. Conkey with God's World, God's Way, sponsored by cr101radio.com in association with Grace Community School and Nicene Covenant Church. Please visit cr101radio.com, where you'll find free Christian audiobooks, ebooks and podcasts for the Christian who can't accept the easy answers. Today we push on into Genesis 4 to 9. And I'm going to ask you one question over and over. Who doesn't belong on the earth? Yeah, that's right. Who actually does not belong on the earth? Who can truly sing, "The world is not my home, I'm just a passing through"? Because there is a group who absolutely do not belong on the earth. They're just a passing through to somewhere. Now, the Bible is very clear that there is a class of people with no abiding place on this planet. Now, the exile preachers say, it's you, the Christian. This world is not my home. They teach Christians to sing, as it were. We're just a passing through. But, wait a minute. Just because you sing it doesn't mean it's true. Let's see what God says. Genesis chapter 4. Now, Adam and Eve have been busy multiplying on that marriage mattress, and Cain and Abel are born. Now, don't rush past the details here, because there's more in this chapter than just murder. Adam and Eve have instructed their children in God's ways. And how do I know it? Look at what the boys know how to do. They know how to maintain covenant with God. They know how to build an altar the right way. They know which offerings to bring, looking forward in faith to the promised sacrifice of the Lamb of God. And where did they learn that? Not a wee school down the road. There wasn't one. Their parents taught them. So, by this time, Adam and Eve had been communing with God for years. Now, in this chapter, God talks even to Cain repeatedly. And Cain doesn't bat an eyelid as if it were something strange. Direct conversation with God was normal in that family. So, repentant Adam and Eve, clothed by Christ, engaged in Christian education. And you know, Christian education isn't an option for weirdos. It's a responsibility of all Christian parents. It's also another key area of dominion. If you're a teacher, hallelujah, teach for Christ. And it doesn't have to be general schooling. Teach whatever you're good at. Maybe a trade, a skill, a discipline. I'll have to say, having lived in Switzerland, that the Swiss and the Germans have a fine apprenticeship system. Now, Cain and Abel were apprenticed by their father in the actual work of dominion, hands-on, day by day. And that's education the way God designed it. Covenant truth, along with practical skill, passed on from father to son. And what was the content of Cain and Abel's education? It was God's covenant. How man relates to God. I've already mentioned the altar. But also how man relates to man. Husband to wife, brother to brother. Plus, as I've said, an apprenticeship in the family's central task of dominion. So, if you're looking for the outline of a Christian curriculum, people ask me, well, Nathan, what Christian curriculum do you recommend? Well, it's there, in seed form albeit, in Genesis 4. Now, let's watch the dominion task take a huge leap forward. So, with all that formation by their parents, the division of labour begins. Cain, he specialises in vegetables, not my deal. Abel, he specialises in beef, etc. Much more up my street. Now, when you divide the labour, your effectiveness multiplies. Specialisation is a vital tool of godly dominion. Doing everything yourself, I'm going to say, is not God's way. So beware of that trap of doing everything yourself when you don't need to. And I also suspect here that there's the use of this gold that was mentioned before as a means of exchange, greasing the wheels for trade between the two brothers, for example, greasing the wheels for the division of labour. Okay, now, remember what we saw in chapter 2. Gold sitting near God's people, God's ordained store of wealth. Now, once you have a medium of exchange, you don't have to grow your own vegetables and raise your own sheep and make your own tools. You can do the one thing God made you really good at and trade that for the rest. Now, that's not worldly economics sneaking into the Bible. That's the Bible laying the foundations of economics. Division of labour, specialisation, honest money, and deal-making. They're all there before Genesis is 5 chapters old, and they serve God's purpose for man, the exercise of that dominion mandate. Now, by the way, maybe you're still finding your calling. Maybe you think that to serve God properly, you have to be a minister, a theologian, or maybe some kind of Christian book author, but do not believe it. I thought that for a long time. I thought that to truly please God, I had to do some form of full-time Christian service, and I acted on that belief. In East Africa, West Africa, North America, Mexico, Korea for that matter, Switzerland for that matter. And I'm here to tell you, although God led me there, that's the fact that you have to be some full-time guy for Christ is not true. Now, we need ministers and theologians. We need good ones. We need better ones, perhaps. And if God has called you to it, please go ahead, please. I wouldn't dream of holding you back. But you, listener, you're unique. And your gifts are unique. Now, Myron Golden says, when God made you, he smiled and he broke the mold. And I believe that. God has given you your strengths, your weaknesses, your aptitudes, your contacts, your place, your history, and your calling is wherever your dominion work happens. So, all right. Okay, there's a lot of talk about this common kingdom. There's a guy called VanDrunen. He has a book, Living in God's Two Kingdoms, and he says that there's a common kingdom, which, in his words, embraces the human race in common rather than a holy people distinguished from the rest of the human race. So the world is basically neutral. It's a big neutral shared space. It's neither Christian nor anti-Christian. It's just common. So, okay, he says that. Here's my question. Is there any hint of a common kingdom happily embracing the whole human race in the story of Cain and Abel? You do know that story. But look at the chapter, and what do we actually find? We find a covenant keeper, Abel, who looked forward in faith to the blood redemption of Christ. Okay. And we find a covenant breaker, Cain, who sought self-atonements through his own works, offering the fruit of his own labour on his own terms. Now, what did this covenant breaker, Cain, do with the covenant keeper, Abel? Did they just hold hands and share a neutral kingdom? Live and let live? No. He wanted to destroy him, and he did. He spilled his brother's blood. He bashed his brains in. That's your common kingdom, VanDrunen. How do you like it? This is exactly what the Lord had told the serpent back in chapter 3. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. God says it. Where's this common kingdom? Enmity. That's what God said, not commonality. Good grief. The Bible, in this chapter, shows us the essential relationship between the godly and the ungodly, and far from a common kingdom shared by believer and unbeliever alike. There's a fight to the death. There is no neutrality between God and the devil, between the covenant keeper and the covenant breaker. Okay, so now we come to the heart of today's episode. Strangers and sojourners. I'm just a wayfaring stranger. Now, we're told by people like VanDrunen that Christians are just strangers and sojourners on the earth. We're all anxious and itchy to get to heaven. But, okay, we've already been given God's meaning of exile in the first episode. Exile is God's judgment on sin. But what about this idea of being by nature not belonging to the earth? Being strangers and sojourners on the earth. We don't belong here. What's the biblical doctrine of being a stranger on the earth, a sojourner on the earth, not belonging on the earth? All right. Well, we'll take the same method as we did before. We go to the first mention in the Bible and let God define the term. Oh, but VanDrunen says, and he's a very clever man. Okay, let's just read the Bible. So it's found in chapter 4, verse 12. God is speaking to Cain, who has just murdered his righteous brother. And he says, now you can take VanDrunen's word if you like, but he says, a fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. Once more, a fugitive, speaking to Cain, who's just bashed his brother's brains in. Literally. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. This fugitive and vagabond is vanad in the Hebrew. Fugitive and vagabond. Now, what does that mean? It implies having no place at all. Not belonging on the earth, to the earth. What? Now, hold that thought and step back for a minute. God has given man an essential relationship to the world. Now, that relationship remains for us after Adam. Damaged by sin, yes, but real. We have, as believers, an essential relationship to the world. God ordained. We Christians belong in this world by God's ordination. Belong. It's our God-given role to be God's managers of creation each of us over our own wee patch. Okay, that's Christians. But the reprobates, the murderers of God's people, the anti-Christians, they're the ones who fundamentally, in their very being, their essence, have no essential relationship to the earth. They do not belong. They don't belong. They're cursed by God. And it's their destiny, their identity, to be cut off from the land. Oh, I'm going too far. Nathan's going too far as usual. You think I'm making this up? Scripture is clear. Psalm 37, verse 9. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. Now that's you, brother. Psalm 37, verse 22. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. Book of Proverbs 2, 21 and 22. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it, but the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. Read it again, slowly. Look it up, Proverbs 2, 21 and 22. Read the whole of Psalm 37. Who inherits the earth? Who belongs in the earth? The righteous, God's people. Who gets rooted out, no matter how far they're burrowed in? The wicked. Yes, exile is real, and God's people can be delivered into exile. But look at the biblical pattern. But VanDrunen, look at the Bible. God's people go into exile, they're chastened, and the remnant comes back. So exile, for the covenant people, it's discipline. It ain't destiny. It isn't our identity. Far from it. Exactly the opposite. Are you going to put up with people with these fancy names telling you something that turns God's design totally upside down because it suits you, because it's familiar? Tell God, when you're praying to him, that he's wrong. Tell him he's wrong. Or you can just accept it and rejoice in it. To be in your bones, estranged from the earth, a stranger in the earth, that's a far deeper curse than exile. There's no coming back from that. And this is reserved for the wicked only. Psalm 37, verse 10. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. It's the wicked who have no abiding place in the earth, not the righteous. Now, somebody's going to say, but Nathan, what about Peter? Doesn't Peter call believers strangers and pilgrims? Yes, he does, and we'll deal with those passages properly later in this series. But here's the short answer for now. When the Bible calls a believer a stranger, it's always a stranger somewhere specific, among a specific people for a specific season. Abraham was a stranger in Canaan, a land that belonged to his descendants by promise. He wasn't a stranger to the earth. Peter's scattered believers were strangers among the pagan nations they lived in, strangers to the wicked lifestyle. They weren't aliens to the planet God gave them. There's a world of difference between being a stranger in Babylon, the heart of darkness and evil and idolatry and witchcraft and magic, and being a stranger to the earth itself. The first is a season. It's an ethical, moral thing. It's a covenantal thing. I don't belong to this wicked Babylon, but Babylon is judged. Now, the second is Cain's curse. Don't let anyone, no matter how many books he's written, or how fancy his name is, how many degrees he has, oh, but he reads Hebrew. Does he? Okay. Don't let anyone hang Cain's curse around your neck and call it your identity. Now, here's where it gets more serious. Authors, preachers, and teachers who tell you that you're in exile on the earth are taking what the Bible calls a curse, the result of sin, and making it your identity. A blood-bought, adoptive Son of God. Your identity. And it's worse than that. They use good biblical words to tell you that you have no abiding home on the earth, that you are by nature a foreigner to the earth, an alien by nature, an outsider by nature, a refugee on the earth by nature. Do you see what they're doing? They're taking God's curse on Cain, the murderer of God's people, the unrepentant anti-Christian, and telling you that this curse of permanent estrangement from the earth is the core of your identity. Isaiah 5:20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. You know, Cain understood this sentence better than many of our Bible teachers understand it. When the sentence came down, he cried out, "My punishment is greater than I can bear." He was wicked, reprobate, but he wasn't a fool. This man loved planting his vegetables. He was destined to wander a world that would never answer to his hand again. Cain, the reprobate, knew the difference between bitter and sweet. This was a bitter blow, and he knew it. Sadly, tragically, dangerously, many of our teachers hand out Cain's curse from the pulpit like it's a promise and call it comfort. This is who you are. This is your destiny. Can you see the perversity of it? All right. Take some time to think about it, but please, make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's diabolical. What does Cain do after God makes him a stranger on the earth? Does he sit down and weep in the corner? No. He continues, full steam ahead, taking dominion, not under God, but his way, Satan's way. Now he builds his family, then he builds a city, a civilization, a social order built by rebels for rebels. This is the first non-Christian social order in history, and it sets the tone for every non-Christian civilization since. Now, are these civilizations neutral? Neither here nor there. Harmless neighbours in the common kingdom? No, they are not. Non-Christian civilization is actively hostile and murderous towards true dominion-taking believers. Think about it. The same heart that picked up a stone and bashed his brother's head in, picked up stones and built a city. Same heart, same stones, and that pattern hasn't changed a bit. Every social order built in rebellion against God carries that same heart in its foundations. It may look impressive, have courts and universities and hospitals and lovely architecture, but scratch the surface and ask it what it thinks of the crown rights of King Jesus, and watch how quickly the smile disappears. I have so much more to tell you. I was going to go up to Noah in this episode. It's just too much to fit in. But let's run the numbers. I'm going to tell you, deal with everything up to Noah. I'm going to tell you things that you definitely did not know before. And then we're going to push forward. But I hope this episode has blessed you. Reach out if you have any questions or comments. Questions at godsworld.godsway.com. If you have any comments to make. It's been a blessing preparing this. And until next week.